The Zarthians arrived without warning, their ships casting massive shadows over Earth's cities. Their message was broadcast globally, in every language, as if they had known how to communicate with humanity long before they landed. Their leader, King Zaru, stood tall, his voice cold and dismissive. "Humans," he began, "your time of independence has come to an end. We offer you a choice: submit to us, or be annihilated. Your world will serve our empire, and in return, we will allow you to exist as our subjects. Refuse, and you will be wiped from the universe." Earth's leaders, scrambling for solutions, gathered in an emergency meeting. They had no doubt about the Zarthian capabilities. The alien race had dominated countless worlds across the galaxy, each conquest swift and merciless. The Zarthians prided themselves on their technology, military prowess, and their supposed superiority over all other species. Their empire spanned galaxies, crushing every civilization that dared oppose them. But humanity, despite the fear running through the streets, was not one to surrender. A message of defiance was drafted and broadcast to the Zarthian fleet in orbit. It was a simple statement, issued by a faceless human spokesperson. "We will not submit. We will fight." The Zarthians, who had conquered species far more technologically advanced than humans, found this response laughable. King Zara smirked as he listened to the transmission. "Foolish creatures," he said to his advisors. "They will learn the price of defiance." The Zarthians launched their first strike within hours. Massive energy beams rained down from their ships, tearing through Earth's defense systems as though they were nothing. Major cities were reduced to rubble in seconds, and the death toll climbed faster than anyone could track. The Zarthians watched from above, confident that their overwhelming force would break humanity's spirit. But Earth did not crumble. Even as the cities fell and the casualties mounted, humanity fought back. The early attempts were clumsy, uncoordinated, but the determination to resist burned fiercely. Military forces from every nation mobilized, deploying everything they had: fighter jets, tanks, drones, missiles. The Zarthians may have had superior firepower, but humans had something else: a refusal to bow down to anyone. The first engagements were brutal. Alien walkers, towering machines of war, stormed Earth's remaining strongholds. Human forces, though outgunned, used guerrilla tactics, retreating into cities and using the terrain to their advantage. With every ambush, every small victory, they learned. They adapted. As the Zarthian forces ravaged the planet, King Zaru watched, unimpressed. "They resist like insects," he said, "but they are just delaying the inevitable. They will fall, as all others have fallen." But the resistance only grew stronger. Humanity's scientists began analyzing Zarthian technology, searching for weaknesses. Engineers reverse-engineered captured equipment, turning it into weapons that could match the alien threat. Hackers disrupted Zarthian communications, causing confusion and disarray in their ranks. Every setback for the Zarthians, though minor, became a source of hope for humanity. In one of the Zarthian command centers, an alien officer reported the latest human resistance movements to King Zaru. His tone was one of irritation. "These humans are relentless. They do not fight like others we have encountered. They are reckless, unyielding." Zaru dismissed the concerns. "Let them flail. They will fall soon enough." But the human resistance refused to be extinguished. Across the globe, ordinary people began to rise. Civilians, who had once watched the news in despair, took up arms. They fortified their cities, established underground networks, and shared knowledge on how to fight the invaders. The war was no longer just the military's burden, it became a fight for survival that united the entire planet. Reports from the battlefield painted a grim picture, but for the first time, there were glimmers of hope. In small skirmishes, human forces began to win. Soldiers, once outmatched, now held their ground with the help of the captured Zarthian weapons. The aliens, who had anticipated an easy conquest, began to realize that humanity would not be subdued easily. Still, the Zarthians pushed harder. King Zaru, growing impatient with the war's progress, ordered a final, all-out assault. His pride refused to let him believe that a primitive species could even dream of resisting his empire. He deployed more ships, more troops, determined to crush humanity once and for all. But the harder the Zarthians fought, the more humanity's resolve strengthened. With every loss, there was learning. With every victory, even a small one, there was hope. Human defiance grew into something the Zarthians had never encountered, a force that could not be broken. The Zarthian forces descended with overwhelming precision, their technology making human defenses seem obsolete. They targeted Earth's key cities and military bases, confident their superior firepower would bring swift surrender. The skies over major cities were filled with Zarthian ships, and their foot soldiers marched through the rubble, expecting minimal resistance. Energy blasts reduced entire neighborhoods to dust, and in the midst of the destruction, humanity braced for what felt like an inevitable defeat. But even as Zarthian walkers stormed through the streets, humanity held on. Underground bunkers became command centers where the world's greatest minds worked day and night, trying to analyze the enemy's weaknesses. Soldiers and engineers who had managed to capture alien tech sent fragments of their discoveries to the labs. It was here, in the wreckage, that humanity began to push back in ways the Zarthians hadn't anticipated. Earth's military forces, while battered, adapted quickly. Guerrilla tactics became the key to survival. The massive Zarthian machines were formidable, but not invincible. Human forces used the urban landscape to their advantage. They knew their cities, every alley, every rooftop, every underground passage. They set traps, ambushed patrols, and engaged in hit-and-run attacks, slowly chipping away at the invaders. The first significant victory came when a squad of soldiers in the ruined streets of Paris managed to disable a Zarthian walker using homemade explosives and sheer audacity. It was a small victory, but it sent a ripple of hope through human forces. For the first time, the Zarthians saw their seemingly unstoppable war machine falter. The Zarthian commanders couldn't understand how humans were still fighting. To them, the battle should have been over the moment their ships entered Earth's atmosphere. Their empire had crushed civilizations far more advanced than this one. Yet here, on this backward planet, they were facing resistance that refused to die. They underestimated the sheer grit of their opponents. In the United States, a group of scientists managed to reverse engineer one of the Zarthian communication systems. They discovered that the Zarthian forces operated on a highly centralized system, one that relied on direct orders from their king. If this link could be disrupted, they realized, the invaders might become disorganized. This discovery sparked a coordinated effort to exploit the weakness, setting the stage for humanity's first large-scale counterattack. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, the war took its toll. Civilians became fighters, building makeshift weapons and defending their homes. The cost of resistance was high, but surrender was never an option. The aliens' brutal tactics only served to strengthen human resolve. Mothers, fathers, children, all who could fight joined in the resistance. As Earth's forces continued to adapt, the Zarthian Empire began to experience something they had never faced before: sustained losses. The humans weren't fighting to win territory, they were fighting for survival. They were willing to endure massive casualties as long as they made every Zarthian victory as costly as possible. And with each encounter, the Zarthians lost more ground than they gained. The decisive moment came when Earth's forces launched a coordinated strike against one of the Zarthian motherships. Using hacked alien communication systems, they disrupted the ship's defenses just long enough for a squad of specially trained commandos to breach its hull. The mission was dangerous, bordering on suicidal, but it worked. The humans planted explosives in the ship's core and managed to escape just as the massive vessel erupted in a ball of fire over the Pacific Ocean. This victory sent shockwaves through the Zarthian ranks. For the first time, their king received reports of defeat. King Zaru, who had watched the war unfold with an air of detached arrogance, now found himself questioning the strength of his empire. How could such a technologically inferior species inflict damage on his forces? The humans, emboldened by their success, pressed forward. With each victory, they gained access to more of the Zarthians' advanced technology. Engineers worked around the clock, refining Earth's weapons and defenses using alien tech. The tide of the war was beginning to shift. As the human resistance grew, the Zarthian forces started to show cracks. Morale among their troops, once unwavering, began to falter. The centralized command structure that had once been their strength now became a liability. Without clear orders from their superiors, Zarthian ground forces began to make mistakes. They hesitated, retreated when they should have advanced, and failed to coordinate effectively. On Earth, this shift in momentum was felt everywhere. For the first time since the war had begun, people started to believe they could win. Stories of Zarthian defeats spread like wildfire, inspiring even those in the most remote corners of the globe to rise up. The Zarthians, desperate to regain control, launched a massive offensive. It was their last attempt to crush humanity, an all-or-nothing assault on Earth's remaining strongholds. But by then, it was too late. The human forces were no longer disorganized, no longer clinging to survival by a thread. They had become a formidable fighting force, hardened by months of battle and fueled by a deep-seated need to protect their world. The Zarthians soon realized that they had underestimated humanity in every way. Their belief in their own superiority had blinded them to the truth: humans would never surrender. The more destruction the Zarthians rained down upon them, the stronger they became. Every act of violence only cemented their determination. By the time the final assault began, Earth's forces were ready. They had studied their enemy, learned their tactics, and adapted their technology. In one of the most pivotal battles of the war, human forces managed to shoot down a Zarthian warship over the Atlantic, forcing the aliens to retreat. It was a victory that sent a clear message to the invaders: humanity would not be conquered. The Zarthians, for all their technological advantages, had failed to account for one crucial factor: human willpower. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, but they found themselves facing a species that would rather fight to the last breath than live under subjugation. King Zaru, now facing a war he had never anticipated, realized too late that his empire was in danger of defeat. He had pushed humanity to the brink, and in doing so, he had awoken a force he couldn't control. The humans were no longer just defending their planet, they were coming for him. Human forces, having learned from countless battles and skirmishes, now stood on the brink of something unimaginable, turning the tide against the Zarthian Empire. King Zaru, who once viewed humanity as nothing more than an inconvenience, was now forced to reckon with a reality he never anticipated. His fleets, his warriors, and his supposedly invincible technology were being pushed back. The more he deployed, the harder humanity fought. It wasn't just stubbornness. The humans were fighting with a ferocity the Zarthians had never experienced. What became apparent, as the war dragged on, was that humanity had mastered something crucial: adaptability. They weren't merely defending Earth anymore, they were learning, improving, and most dangerously for the Zarthians, planning. In secret, human leaders devised a bold strategy, a move that could change the course of the war for good. They decided to go after the one thing that kept the Zarthian forces unified: King Zaru himself. Human intelligence had gathered vital information about Zarthian command structures. At the center of their empire's authority was their king, Zaru, who personally oversaw every significant military action. He was arrogant, deeply invested in the belief that no species could challenge his reign. But this overconfidence left him vulnerable. His central command ship was the key to controlling his forces. If Zaru could be captured or eliminated, the Zarthians would crumble into disarray. A daring plan was set in motion. Using the knowledge they had gained from captured Zarthian technology, human forces prepared for a strike at the heart of the alien command. The goal was simple yet incredibly dangerous: infiltrate Zaru's flagship, disable its defenses, and bring him down. This mission wasn't just about killing the Zarthian leader, it was about capturing him alive. Humanity wanted to make a statement, not just to the Zarthians, but to the galaxy. They wouldn't merely resist, they would show the universe what happens when you underestimate humans. As the battle for Earth raged on, a small team of elite human operatives executed the audacious plan. The humans had reverse-engineered a cloaking device from alien tech, enabling their ships to slip past Zarthian defenses unnoticed. They breached Zaru's command vessel, a massive ship that dwarfed anything in Earth's arsenal. The humans moved quickly, navigating through corridors filled with alien soldiers, until they reached the ship's core, Zara's personal quarters. The moment they breached Zara's chambers, everything changed. The alien king, so accustomed to giving orders from the safety of his throne, found himself face to face with the very beings he had once called insignificant. He had never imagined that humans would make it this far. His arrogance, which had been his shield for so long, was now his downfall. Zara tried to summon his guards, but it was too late. The human operatives disabled his communication systems, leaving him isolated. He fought back, but not even his advanced armor could protect him from the coordinated strike. For the first time in his life, King Zara felt fear. The capture of Zara sent shockwaves through the Zarthian Empire. With their leader in human custody, the once coordinated invasion force splintered. Commanders, unsure of their next steps, retreated to the safety of space, hoping to regroup. Without Zara's guidance, the Zarthian war effort began to unravel. The centralized control that had once been their strength now became their greatest weakness. The humans, however, did not stop with Zara's capture. They wanted the galaxy to witness the consequences of threatening their home. Zara was brought back to Earth, not as a prisoner of war, but as a symbol of humanity's defiance. News of his capture spread like wildfire. Images of the once powerful king, shackled and humiliated, flashed across every screen. His defeat became a rallying cry, not just for humans, but for species across the galaxy who had suffered under Zarthian rule. With Zara in chains, human leaders made a bold decision. They could have executed him, ending the war in a final, bloody spectacle. But that wasn't enough. Humanity needed to send a message, one that would resonate far beyond Earth's borders. Zara's fate would be public and painful. The Zarthians had come to Earth expecting to conquer, but they would leave in disgrace. Human forces paraded Zara through the streets of a rebuilt city, dragging him before a crowd of billions. He had once stood as a symbol of invincible power, but now, covered in the dust and grime of defeat, he was nothing more than a broken ruler. His ornate armor, which had once been a mark of his dominance, was battered and torn. The king of the Zarthians, now powerless, was shown to the universe as a lesson: humanity was not to be underestimated. The impact of Zara's capture rippled through the galaxy. The Zarthian Empire, once thought unshakable, began to fracture. Without their king, the Zarthian forces splintered into factions, each vying for power, each weaker than the last. Alien species that had lived in fear of Zarthian domination now saw an opportunity to rise. Rebellions erupted across the Zarthian-controlled worlds, inspired by humanity's defiance. But for Earth, the war was not just about survival. It was about sending a message. Humanity, despite being seen as a lesser species, had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. They had faced an empire that spanned galaxies, an empire that had crushed countless civilizations, and they had won. Zara's capture wasn't just a victory, it was a turning point. Humanity had proven that even the most powerful forces in the universe could be brought to their knees. As Zara was led away, his eyes filled with a mix of disbelief and shame. He had come to Earth expecting to rule, but he was leaving it as a prisoner. And as the crowds cheered, it became clear that humanity had not only defended their world, they had earned the respect of the galaxy. The streets were packed with people, their faces filled with emotions that ranged from rage to triumph. This was more than just a victory parade. It was a catharsis, a moment where humanity, after being pushed to the brink of destruction, had finally broken free from the fear of annihilation. The spectacle unfolding before them was unprecedented. The once mighty King Zaru, ruler of the Zarthian Empire, was being dragged through the streets as a prisoner. His defeat was now complete, and his humiliation was laid bare for all to see. Zaru, who had commanded fleets that destroyed entire worlds, now trudged through the dirt, his regal aura shattered. His once imposing figure was reduced to that of a prisoner, battered and humbled. The alien king's pride had been his undoing. He had underestimated humanity, believing them to be weak and primitive, a species that could be dominated easily. But now, that arrogance had led him here, to this moment, where he was paraded before the very people he sought to enslave. The crowd roared as Zara passed, their cheers mingling with jeers. To them, this was justice. The war had taken so much from Earth, cities lay in ruins, millions of lives had been lost, and countless more had been changed forever. But now, for the first time since the Zarthians had arrived, humanity stood united in victory. Zara's capture wasn't just symbolic. It was the culmination of a struggle that had tested humanity's will to survive. They had faced an enemy far more powerful than any they had known, and they had won. As Zara stumbled forward, his mind reeled with disbelief. How had this happened? He had led the Zarthians through dozens of conquests, each one more successful than the last. His empire spanned galaxies, and no species had ever been able to resist their might. And yet, here he was, a prisoner of the very species he had once dismissed as insignificant. Zara's thoughts turned to his fleet, now in disarray. Without him to lead, the Zarthian forces had retreated, directionless and demoralized. The empire he had built, the legacy he had fought to protect, was crumbling before his eyes. For humanity, Zara's public humiliation served as a reminder of their resilience. It wasn't just the technology or the tactics that had won them the war, it was their spirit, their refusal to give up even when all seemed lost. They had faced extinction, and instead of cowering in fear, they had fought back with everything they had. This moment, watching their enemy's leader brought low, was proof that they could overcome any threat, no matter how insurmountable it seemed. In the days following Zara's capture, the Zarthian Empire began to fracture. The once unified military force splintered into factions, each vying for control in the absence of their leader. Worlds that had lived under the Zarthians' iron grip for centuries began to rise up, inspired by humanity's victory. Rebellions broke out across the galaxy as species long oppressed by the Zarthians saw an opportunity to free themselves. Zara's fall wasn't just a victory for Earth. It was the spark that ignited a galaxy-wide uprising. On Earth, the focus shifted from war to rebuilding. The damage inflicted by the Zarthian invasion had been catastrophic. Cities lay in ruins, entire landscapes had been scarred by battle, and millions were displaced. But there was hope. Humanity had survived, and now they would rebuild. The war had united the world in a way that hadn't been seen in centuries. Nations that once stood divided by politics and ideology now worked together toward a common goal: the restoration of their planet. Yet, as the rebuilding began, the memory of what had been lost weighed heavily. The war had come at a great cost. Families had been torn apart, lives had been upended, and scars, both physical and emotional, would remain long after the final Zarthian ship had left Earth's atmosphere. But for all the loss, there was also a sense of pride. Humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated. They had faced a superior enemy and not only survived but emerged victorious. As the galaxy watched, humanity's influence began to grow. Species that had once feared the Zarthians now turned to Earth for guidance, seeking alliances and partnerships. Earth, which had once been a relatively insignificant planet on the galactic stage, was now seen as a beacon of strength and resilience. The humans, who had fought so fiercely to protect their home, were now regarded with a newfound respect. King Zara, now confined to a secure facility on Earth, remained a shadow of his former self. Stripped of his power, he was left to contemplate his downfall. His empire was in ruins, his forces scattered, and his reputation destroyed. He had come to Earth expecting to conquer, to add another world to his collection of victories. But instead, he had been defeated, his arrogance exposed for all to see. Humanity's leaders debated what to do with Zara. Some called for his execution, arguing that he should pay for the countless lives lost during the war. Others believed he should be imprisoned for life, forced to live out his days as a reminder of the consequences of underestimating Earth. In the end, they chose the latter. Zara would spend the rest of his days in isolation, far from the galaxy he once sought to dominate. As the war faded into memory, humanity looked toward the future. The lessons learned during the conflict shaped the next generation of leaders and thinkers. They had faced extinction and come through stronger, more united than ever before. The galaxy was vast, and while the Zarthians had been defeated, the threat of future enemies was always present. But now, humanity was prepared. They had learned that the greatest weapon they possessed wasn't their technology, or their military might, it was their unbreakable spirit. And so, as Earth began to heal, the galaxy took note. The humans had not only defended their world, they had earned their place among the stars. They had proven that they could stand against the most powerful forces in the universe and emerge victorious. King Zara's defeat was more than just a victory in a war. It was a testament to humanity's strength, a reminder that no matter the odds, they would always rise to the challenge. The Zarthians had demanded war, and in the end, they had been given exactly what they asked for. But it wasn't just war they found, it was a force far greater than they could have ever imagined. And in the streets where Zara had been dragged, humanity's future was forged, stronger and more resilient than ever before.